Hi, and welcome to the Oikos Family Podcast. I'm Sonja Wood, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you Chapter 3 from our little Oikos Classic called Weed with an Ill Name. This is Chapter 3 that is going to follow, but I just wanted to give a little introduction to it because I believe that there's a lot of value in this particular chapter of us being able to glean something from it that will help us in parenting and just have understanding of different levels of status, I suppose you could say, and how to not fall into the trap of judgment and disrespect and arrogance. So, yes, I believe there is something everyone and anyone can actually learn from this particular chapter. I know I certainly did, and I know it was of value to me when I was, preparing to share it with you, and before that, when I read it myself in preparation to reading it aloud to the children, and then in actual fact the children each read it on their own at different times in their life. And now I get the privilege of being able to share it with you here. But what I'm saying is that each time I have read the story, I have learned something of great value from it, and I have been able to be blessed by that and hopefully can apply those lessons into my everyday life. So I do hope you will find value in this next chapter, Chapter 3 of Weed with an Ill Name. Thank you for joining me. Bye for now.
Chapter 3 Developments of Character. "Come on, Sam," George yelled. "Hurry up! I want my pony saddled." "Did you say your pony, Master Franklin?" "Yes, my pony," George replied rather arrogantly. "Oh, really? I didn't know the pony belonged to you. I thought it was your uncle's." "Don't get smart with me," said George, beginning to get angry. "It is none of your business whether the pony is mine or my uncle's. You should just mind your own business. When I say I want the pony saddled, then it is your job to do it." "Someone else may have a different opinion about that," replied Sam. He was the yard man, gardener, and groom. George's arrogant manner offended him. "I'm not trying to fight with you," he added. "I must say I have lived at the Elms a long time. I have never been ordered around as much as I have been since you came here 3 months ago. I don't see any reason for it either. I don't mean any offense, George, but I am not your servant. Mr. Gray was the one who hired me. He is the one who pays my wages." "Well," George Franklin demanded very angrily, "tell me this. Does he pay you to act smart and not do what you are told?" Sam did not answer him. Instead, he returned to the job he had been doing when George so rudely interrupted him. Impatiently, George walked back and forth in the yard for a minute playing with his whip. Suddenly, he walked up to Sam and said in a tight, angry voice, "Are you going to do what I told you to do? Yes or no?" "Well, Master Franklin, if that's the way it's going to be," returned Sam, standing up, looking the boy straight in the face. "If I must choose either yes or no, then I say no. If you will listen to me for a moment," he added respectfully, "I'll tell you why." "I am not going to listen to you," cried young George Franklin, as his pride and arrogance boiled over. "I'm not going to stoop down to your level in order to argue with you. I'm just going to ask my uncle whether trash like you should be allowed to insult me like that." Sam interrupted. "You had better stop right there, Master George. We don't let anyone call us bad names in this part of the country. As for asking your uncle about me, you're welcome to do that. Maybe I will have something to ask him, too." When he had finished saying this, Sam returned to his work. George Franklin walked away with an angry, red face. A few minutes later he found Mr. Gray over on another part of his farm helping some workers. "Are you very busy, Uncle James?" asked George. "I'm not too busy to listen to you, my boy. "Is there anything I can do for you?" asked the farmer kindly. "Thank you, uncle. I want to talk to you about Sam Robbins. I have something to tell you." George told him loudly, feeling important. "Really? What is it?" "Wait a minute, though," added George's uncle. Looking at George's face, he very wisely guessed it was about something which made George angry. "If it is something that is not good, then we had better walk over here a little ways. There isn't any reason for these men to hear what we are talking about," said Mr. Gray in a quiet, low voice. "I don't mind if anyone else hears what I have to say, uncle," replied George. "Maybe I do, my boy, so I think my idea is best." Mr. Gray led him away from the others. "No one can hear us here," he said. "So now, did you want to tell me something about Sam Robbins?" "Yes, uncle. He has been very arrogant to me, very arrogant indeed." "I am very sorry to hear that, and I am very surprised too. I always thought Robbins was unusually civil and polite. George, please tell me, how was he arrogant toward you?" "Well, I only wanted him to—" George then went on to tell his uncle as much as he could remember about the conversation, or rather the argument, he and Sam had. To give him credit, George only told the truth and nothing but the truth. He was taught that dishonesty was disgraceful to a gentleman. Not telling the truth is a disgrace to any other person as well. George probably did not think about dishonesty being a sin against God, who is holy and true. The boy would have hated himself if he had purposely hidden the truth or exaggerated. In this case, he thought he had such good evidence against poor Sam that he did not need to exaggerate at all. That is why, when he had finished telling his story, his uncle took him by surprise. Mr. Gray coldly asked, "Is that all, George?" "Yes, Uncle James, I think that's all," the boy replied, but he was very confused. "Didn't Robbins give you any reason why he refused to saddle Wallace?" Wallace was the pony's name. "No," said George. Then he added, "I remember now that he did say something near the end about explaining why he would not do it. I did not bother to listen to him because he had been so arrogant to me before." "Well, right now, let's forget about how arrogant he was. Don't you think, my dear nephew, that it would have been a very good idea to hear his reasons anyway?" "Yes, uncle, it would have been, if he hadn't been so smart to me at the very beginning," George persisted. "Well, George, I hope you don't think I am being arrogant towards you too, but I am going to defend Sam. I'll tell you why he could not obey your orders when you gave them to him." George turned very red. He didn't say anything. His uncle went on. "There are 2 reasons why Sam could not help you out right when you asked him to. First, I had put him to work on a job. I told him not to do anything else until he finished that job. The second reason is that when I went into the stable this morning, I noticed that Wallace is starting to get lame. I gave orders not to ride him so he could rest. I intended to tell you about this and to tell you have ridden the pony a little too hard lately. I didn't see you, and in the meantime, I came over here to check out a problem my men had. You see," continued Mr. Gray softly, "Robbins was just obeying my orders when he disobeyed yours." "If you had just told me that, then it would have been all right," said George. "You even said yourself that you would not listen to what he had to say." "I meant that it would have been better if he had told me that at first. Instead, he argued with me and criticized whatever I said. I was not going to put up with that," George said, very angrily. "Calm down, George, calm down," Mr. Gray interrupted. "Or even I might have to criticize the way you are speaking to me." Then he added, "It would be best if we didn't talk about this any more right now. I am sorry if you are disappointed that you can't have any fun with Wallace today. I am sure you understand why Wallace has to stay in the stable." It is very possible that George understood this. Unfortunately, though, his pride was hurt. He was still very angry with Sam Robbins. George felt angry with his uncle too, although he did not tell him that. George Franklin's ego had been questioned. George thought that his uncle had not paid enough attention to his complaints. Instead of accepting his uncle's good-natured invitation to walk across the farm with him, he grumpily went back home. As he went by the farmyard, he saw the man who had made him angry. George angrily shouted and cursed at Sam. No doubt Sam Robbins would have been wiser to ignore what the boy said. If Sam was going to answer at all, a soft answer that turneth away wrath would have been better. However, Sam was hot-tempered, and he had good reason to be so angry for being attacked with words. It started a great argument between him and George that is quite unnecessary to repeat here. Mr. Gray, returning home by a different way than usual, interrupted them in the middle of the argument. "I'm very glad you are here, sir," said Sam as Mr. Gray came up to them. "I want you to tell me, please, who is the master here?" "I'm glad you came too, Uncle James," said George. "I want to know—" "Would both of you be kind enough to be quiet right now?" Mr. Gray said sternly. "I have already heard enough. Sam, you can go on with your work. George, please come with me into the house. This is not the right place for you." Saying this, the farmer began to walk away. "Sir," Sam Robbins pleaded. "Uncle James," George coaxed. "I will not listen to anything right now," Mr. Gray said quietly. "Sam, you know I always mean what I say. You, George, must learn that too. I will talk with both of you some other time, not right now." George did not argue any more with his uncle's decision. He saw that it would be useless. He went back to the farmhouse, into his room, and shut the door. Sam went on with his work.